Hello and welcome to the Whole Life Living Show, a show that explores simple ways to live life at your highest potential through outstanding topics and positive news from a healthy, happier, more positive, loving, conscious mindset with internationally known guests and everyday people sharing simple ways to take belief and apply it towards mastering your dreams in life. I'm your host, Gideons. I myself am an international speaker, author, and life mastery coach. If you want to work with me directly or want to know more about the Whole Life Living Show, you can visit us on wholelifeliving.com. I offer group and individual coaching programs, so please visit me there for wholelifeliving.com for any updated shows and guests, and we look forward to having you weekly. Today, my guest is Dr. Simon Casey, a nationally known author, speaker, educator, and the founder of the unique Emotional Mastery Program. We will be discussing today how failure to understand and deal with feelings effectively leads people to seek emotional numbness through drugs, emotional eating, and more. So welcome, Dr. Casey. Good afternoon. How are you doing?
Wonderful, Sherry. Thank you for having me on.
Awesome. It looks like we have I can't see you anymore. It looks like I can only hear you through audio. It says there's a poor internet connection on your side. So, not sure. Do you see your video cam on right now?
Yes.
Huh. That's so
it is
weird.
on.
Oh, now I can see you. What'd you do?
I didn't do anything. I'm not touching anything.
That's so weird.
I'm so scared to touch the computer.
Yeah, the fun. Well, listen, I am all about living in the moment, and let's just take it one step at a time. I mean, that's what this is about. It's about to get your message across, which I'm absolutely intrigued about, because I myself overcame, a terrible addiction in the 90s in which I had my own near-death experience. So obviously having overcome, many of the things that you talk about, bulimia, drug addiction, anorexia. And, if I look back on those experiences for myself, I was tied in very deeply to emotions. And so can you share with us what the Emotional Mastery Program is and how you developed it?
Absolutely. The way this whole thing came about is when I first started in the field, and I just couldn't understand why people could not stop suffering, or why people just couldn't get out of the depression that they were feeling. Because from an outsider looking in, it seems so simple. Start doing certain things, maybe you'll feel better. But as I started looking more and more as to what's behind all of this, it became very clear to me that emotions makes us who we are, and not understanding our emotions either makes us and breaks us in so many ways. So, and I started putting things together. Then I said, if we're about emotions, if everything about us defines us emotions, and then I have to really figure out what these emotions really are and try to maybe define them to a certain degree. So it took me about three and a half years of studying and figuring things out, and I ended up with 6 core emotions. And believe it or not, about 12 years ago, UCLA spent $3.5 million to find out what are core emotions, and they came up with the same thing. They should have given me the money. I would have told them. Mm-hmm. And it became, I felt really validated, because as human beings, we all feel the same way. We all have the same emotions. It doesn't make any difference where you're from, what your background is, what your beliefs are. We all feel the same way. But what I was really surprised about the most is that our understanding of emotions, our definition of emotions, changed or varied from person to person. Mm-hmm. Because when you don't learn the emotions and their definitions from very early on, you basically make up your own definition. And I was really shocked because I used to do a lot of workshops, and I used to take people to Lake Arrowhead or Palm Springs, and 50, 100 people at a time, and ask the same question. For instance, what's your definition of pain? I will get 100 different answers, which floored me. You would think that you will get the same answer. And it became very evident and very clear that people simply did not know what the definitions of every emotions were. And there, as a result, they ended up dealing with it based upon how they came to terms with them. And oftentimes that was dysfunctional and negative. It was difficult. So not only I basically put it down to 6, and I also came up with the definitions of what each emotion really meant so that people can no longer figure things out. I don't know if you noticed this. When you ask someone, how are you feeling? They always look up.
Yes.
Because they're thinking about how they feel. You don't think about feeling, you feel the feelings. So you're supposed to look down around your heart, because this is where we feel. This is where we think. So when you ask someone, how are you feeling? When you watch their eyes rolling back, they're trying to figure out what they should be saying to you.
Oh, isn't that so
they oftentimes interpret what they think they should be feeling. And of course, when you get out of your feeling and you start interpreting, it becomes really confusing. And not only becomes confusing, but it becomes also very reactional. And because you're trying to make some sense of the world. So for that reason, I decided and sit down and figured out what each definition really meant. And then I started telling people to see if it really what it is. And lo and behold, after years and years of teaching and speaking, hardly any people came and said, this doesn't make sense. In fact, I changed my group therapy. This makes sense therapy. That's how it came about. Because every time I talked about emotions, people came and said, this makes so much sense. How come nobody's teaching them? And because once you understand what really feelings, you understand your core feelings and their definitions, your reaction to what's going on outside of you changes almost instantly. So instead of being reactive, you become more active. Instead of figuring things out, you become in the moment and you work through those emotions and you stay focused, you stay stable, and you actually understand what you're about and what's happening, what that event is about. It starts defining you. So basically, emotions what define us. So if you kind of look at in general, we have our senses. All of us do. In fact, our senses, how we define the world. You know, we got sight and smell, right? The senses. But what people don't understand, there is the 6th sense, and those are called emotions. And you know how I come to this, Sherry? If you look at whether it's sight, smell, hearing, emotions interprets all of them, summarizes all of them, compiles all of them, defines all of them. So great example of this, you look back, for instance, birthdays. You're going to remember some of your birthdays, not all of them, but maybe 1 or 2 or 3. Do you know why?
Why?
Because that birthday or those 2 birthdays were the most emotionally impacting birthdays. So you're able to recall the feeling. And that's how we create memory.
That's funny that you mentioned that, because I can think back like that on my 18th birthday. And interestingly enough, my father was a perfectionist. So he set the stage for perfection for me growing up. And so I reacted and was attached to emotions based on perfectionism. But then at the same time, when I was 18, he came from that old school hard love, meaning you go out and you make your bed, you lie in it, that sort of thinking. And so I was always trying to meet up to his expectations. And as a result of it, when I was 18, he said, no more Christmas presents, no more birthday presents, none of that. You're an adult. You got to go out and make your way. So that feeling was a very, very sad feeling, an emotional feeling of dread and fear, I think, a little bit.
So you understand there's an event, but what makes the event powerful, or what makes the event traumatizing or very joyful, are those emotions that they bear, nothing else. So if the event is so negative, like the one you experienced, therefore the feeling of hurt and the anger and the sadness were attached to that event. And that's why you are able to so recall it, because you know how it impacted your life. But you may not remember your 16th. You may not remember your 14th, because it was just one of those birthdays.
Right.
Isn't it amazing? And we keep having these birthdays every year, but you only remember the far and few.
So true. So true.
And that's because of the emotions, nothing else. You know, I was talking to a salesman a few months ago. There were like hundreds of them. And I said, you know what makes the customer buy the car? It's not logic. It's the emotion. And in fact, you probably have done this, because I know I've done this. I know what my budget was, and I know what I can or cannot afford. It was very simple. And I was a student in college. So I walk into this British car dealers, and they had these convertibles, and I go, oh my God, it's so beautiful. It was like $300-400 a month payments. I know I couldn't afford that, because my budget was $200.
Right.
And the guy said, come on in, just smell the leather, just drive this thing. And lo and behold, I had a car that was paid off, and I'm driving out of there with a brand new car that I cannot afford, but I was feeling so good. It's the emotion that made me buy that car, not logic, because logic was out the door. So I was teaching them, it is what sells are the emotions. So you never sit down and discuss with a client, oh, well, you know, how much can you afford? No, you say, doesn't that car make you feel good? Yes, you belong to that car. That's how you sell it. Emotions, everything. Whether you're buying a car, you're getting into a relationship, buying a home, everything is about emotions. People don't get that. It just floors me. But every decision is pretty much made around emotions.
Well, you know, and that's so true,
So
because this is so different than conventional therapy.
it's different.
Yeah.
Of course it is different, because here's what we really do. In CBT, for instance, cognitive behavior therapy, we want you to kind of think and understand, analyze, change your pattern of thinking, and establish maybe some positive thinking, and therefore the behavior. But how many more behaviors can you establish? But if you get to the bottom of it, you realize the reason we react the way we do is not because our thinking is cloudy, is because our emotions are cloudy. We're not clear with it. So we react the way we do. And I always tell my patients, I really haven't met somebody stupid. All of my patients are smart, but they do the most stupidest things over and over. And I've treated from garbage man to a physician, from a judge, and they keep doing the same thing. And you realize how an intelligent person can keep making these mistakes, and these mistakes could be lifelong. The consequences could be lifelong, and they still keep making them. Why? Because if you do not understand yourself emotionally, more than likely you're not going to understand yourself. And that's why if you don't change yourself in the core, the changes you make on the surface are only temporary.
Well, it sounds like, you know, when you talk about that, it sounds like being in the moment and having awareness, that it's really all about awareness. And I know that for myself, so many of the things you're talking about, I have learned to use, in my own life. The last 2 years have been really about being aware in the moment and being willing to shift my emotions and my feelings in the moment. Because I can be attached to something from the past, meaning, I had an issue that popped up recently. My daughter's in the hospital, and she lives in San Francisco, where my ex-husband's family is. And then my ex-husband's family is still attached to emotions and thoughts about me from 20 years ago. And so the way they treat me today has to do with 20 years ago. And so I wanted to react and stick up for myself and tell myself I'm not that person 20 years later. But I also had attached feelings to anger and resentment for what was over the last 20 years. So I noticed, I talked to my mentor, and she says, listen, you have the choice in this moment to feel feelings of love, to share feelings of love or light with that other person. And so she told me to imagine hugging her and giving her love, in the moment, rather than being attached to the resentment.
Okay, well, there are a few things, Sherry, that you stated that I would like to comment on.
Cool.
You used the word resentment.
Yes.
Okay. What's the definition of resentment? Do you know?
I guess not exactly. I guess when I say the word resentment, is I'm attached to anger towards the other person.
You're partially correct. All resentments are unresolved emotions. Therefore, they're negative emotions you're walking around with. So when you get together with somebody whom you resent, meaning you have unresolved and emotions that you have not been able to process towards that person. I want to give you a great example of this. Have you ever tried to hug someone that you don't like? It's a horrible feeling, isn't it?
Oh yeah, you can feel it in your body.
Exactly. Why? Because you have those feelings that stops you from reaching out, letting that person into your life, into your space. So negative emotions are indicators that says something has not been worked out of your system. So when that person comes into your life, you become very much aware of what you haven't worked out of the way. Now, the idea, another thing I want to tell you before I go there, and people who are listening will also will agree with me on this. Most people believe there are negative emotions and there are positive emotions. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm going to give you 6 core feelings, and then you tell me which ones are positive and which ones are negative, okay?
Okay.
Sad, happy, angry, afraid, guilty, hurt.
So sad, guilt. Oh, you cut out for a second, so I didn't quite hear you. But let me just say, on the negative side, sad, guilty, mad, angry, and hurt.
Okay. So happy is positive. The rest are negative, right?
Yes.
That's what most people believe. And yet, here's the truth. Feelings are neither negative nor positive. They are the way they are. What makes them negative or positive is the way in which we come to terms with them. In other words, if you feel something in the moment, you remember you were talking about the moment? And in that moment, that feeling tells you what you really need to do. You either deal with it effectively and move it out of your system, or you repress it, hold on to it, make it negative energy. Those are your choices. When the feeling is repressed, it becomes negative. When the feeling is expressed, it becomes positive.
So how do we change the expression? Because I notice for myself, I have the tendency to build energy on it, or build, obviously the mental focus on the energy that I'm feeling, if it's something that's bothering me. And then I try, but like you're saying, I try to address it by connecting with what I, want to feel, which is, what I want to do is resolve the issue.
Well, remember, the issues are not the one what bothers us. It is the emotion or emotions that are attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So let's say that you had a problem with an individual and then he violated you and you're feeling hurt and angry, right?
Right.
So you have an option. You either pretend or deny or repress the feeling and hold it in and torment yourself, make yourself diseased, or you actually go face the person and say, I am hurt and I'm angry the way in which you violated me. That's not acceptable. That puts you at ease. So you become either diseased or at ease. But most of us learn to hold things in. Most of us learn that it's not okay to express. It's not okay to tell people because we're so afraid of being judged. We are so afraid of their reactions. We are so afraid that we might be rejected for the way we feel. So we hold it in. We live in a society. It's almost impossible to express, especially with the invention of text messaging, all the internet. We become less and less communicative, less and less expressive, and it makes it even more difficult to deal with issues, therefore with our feelings. So to become effective and become free from those resentments, remember, before a feeling becomes a resentment, you have to make a decision to shove it in, bottle it up, so it will torture you, or you say, I'm going to release this because I need to be honest with myself to do this for me, because you deserve that. So
do you think that so
when
much
you
of the
tell the
show
truth about your feelings, say it again.
I said, do you think that a lot of this is learned behavior or modeled behavior from our parents, or from the time we were young? Absolutely.
We learn everything early in life. In fact, many of our what I call programs are hand-me-down programs. You look at them, you meet them. For instance, if you come from a family where your parents never hugged and kissed, you've got a program about intimacy. So you don't hug and kiss as you get older. You stay away from it. If you come from a family where your parents never shared, talked, they never expressed their feelings, you just simply hold it in. You don't share, you don't go to them, and you grow up thinking that you don't have a right to share. You don't have a right to express. You don't have a right to confront things. And that's why so many people are so afraid of rocking the boat.
Right.
So feelings, it's not because you were hanging in the past, Sherry. It's those feelings you haven't come to terms with won't let you be free in the present. And that's why people keep repeating the past in the present and not understanding why their life is not changing.
Do you think that it has so much to do with a lot of us as a society or people are concerned about what others think? Because I can tell you quite honestly, a lot of the repressed emotions for myself were as a result of my need to be liked. And so as a result of that, I would not always say what was on my mind or what I was feeling because I wanted to be liked and I didn't want to be looked at as, an outsider.
Many people kind of fall into that trap. We all want to be liked. We all want to be wanted. And therefore, we create this trap. how to please, how to just do everything for others. But you know, that's not how it works. The idea is not to be liked. The idea is to be respected and to be understood for who we are and what we represent. But when you don't believe in yourself and when you don't feel that you're worthy as an individual, oftentimes we seek self-worth by being liked by others. And it's a trap. And it's very short-lived. It doesn't work. And of course, when other people feel that you have that need and they give it to you, and of course, then they want some things in return. And you feel stuck. And you can only please so much. You can only do so much. And after a while, you end up becoming resentful. You end up resenting the relationship you created. Then you feel like a hostage. You kind of go, I'm giving, I'm doing, I'm loving, but I'm not getting anything in return. Why? Because you believe that that's the only way you matter. Because you don't matter any other way. Some people believe that they cannot rock the boat. They have to keep peace. And they keep quiet. They shut their mouth. They can never get angry, even though the other person is chaotic, confrontational, angry, and bitter all the time. And even though they feel so unsettled and feel frightened all the time, they won't do it. Why? Because that's what you learn. So ultimately, knowing what you feel, standing up for the way you feel, an expression of that feeling gives you a sense of self, a sense of freedom to be, to grow, and to love. Without accepting your feelings, there is no sense of self. Without expression of those feelings, there's no honesty. Now think about it. We're talking about being honest. I know how many people you ask them, I'm sure you know this. You ask them, how are you feeling? They go, fine. Wait a minute, how could you be fine? You just filed bankruptcy. You just lost your home. You're in divorce. How could you be fine? Because we learned to lie. And we end up living that lie. And now you understand why so many people are lost, because we don't feel we have a right to go tell people that I am hurt or I am angry that I'm losing my home. We can't seem to do that because we're so worried about or fixated about others or the society, and then we live in this dungeon and we end up torturing and tormenting us. And we wonder why our lives are not changing, why we feel so depressed and so sad, why we cannot seem to be able to make the decisions or take the steps to grow and get the life that we deserve. Because everything is given to you. So when you go against the self, when you disrespect your feelings, when you lie about your feelings, you will create a lie, which is the world that you create outside. Remember, the world is created within you first, then it's played outwardly. So if you create this dishonest world within yourself, you're going to create that outside world that's going to not become so kind. It's going to be confusing. And I know so many people, when I ask them, how are you feeling? They go, I'm so confused. They always use that word. You know, Sherry, if you dissect the word confused, take a look at the word confused. Confused to con. And people live in their head, always use that word. I'm so confused. You're never confused. The reason people say I'm confused, and you look at it, what happens? They know what they're feeling. We all do. Like you said, even your physical body makes you feel uncomfortable. You do know what you're feeling. So that feeling comes up. Let's say it's anger. That feeling comes up. You know you're angry, right? And your head comes and says, no, it's not that bad. Or don't rock the boat. Or worry about their feelings. They may not like you. So you collide. Your heart and your head collide. And you become confused. And you can't seem to make a decision. How convenient that becomes.
Wow. So how long, okay, so I love everything that you're sharing because, you know, it's funny because I have twins. I have a second group of kids, and I always tell the kids, you teach people how to treat you. and now I'm listening to you in relationship to so many of the things I've dealt with in myself, and I'm thinking, oh my God, this is so awesome. So how long does your mastery process take for people to come to terms with their emotions and, really shift and change to live this life that you're talking about, that we deserve and we're worthy of?
When I treat people, when they come to me, usually they are midlife, somewhere between 35 to 55, 65. And they go, well, I lived this for so many years. Is it possible for me to change? I go, absolutely. Change is not only possible, but it's incredibly easy to do once you have the right tools.
Yes.
It's very difficult to fix yourself when you don't have the right tools. It's like going down the well and you're so thirsty and you're thirsty, but you don't have a bucket. So you keep coming up empty-handed. So the idea is to teach people the right tools. It really takes, usually when I do the seminars, I usually take them for about 5 to 6 days. Absolutely unbelievable, the transformation. They learn, not only they learn, but they practice what they learn. We call this experiential knowledge. I don't give people head knowledge. I give them experiential knowledge, meaning that you hear, you go practice, you experience, you apply, and you kind of go, oh, I see. So you have a lot of aha moments for yourself. Otherwise, I would have given people books to go read, which most people do. They read, they go, oh, yeah, I'm this page. Oh, yeah, I'm that. Oh, yeah, I'm all over the place. But they can't change because the change has to be made at an emotional level.
Right.
So when I told you earlier, I really haven't met people, stupid people. Their IQ is pretty high, but they're emotionally stupid. So their emotional IQ is low, and that's where they need to mature. That's where they need to learn the tricks. And it really doesn't take so long. And after 3 or 4 sessions, they kind of go, wow, because it makes a total sense.
God, it totally makes sense listening to you. And, it's funny too, because like recently I was talking to somebody, that kind of has, a lot of resentment, and they like to analyze and rationalize this type of process. And I was telling them, everything has a vibration, everything has a feeling. And, I'm a believer that words have a vibration, and, that literally things are coming back to us based on what we put out. What do you think? Do you think that there is any particular words or things that we should never say, and why?
I really, you can't say just about any word, but again, what is attached to those words where you start vibrating? Let me kind of define a little bit more. You're talking about vibration. We're nothing but a bundle of energy. And every emotion is also an energy. Okay? Now, quite often I talk about stress. And you know what stress is?
Wow. And it's funny too, because it could be so real for us, when we use stress.
I know, but do you know what stress is?
No, Is it tied up emotions, tied up feelings?
All stress is holding feelings in. And now here it is. Look how simple this gets. And so easy to diagnose people. When people bottle up their emotions, now we're talking about negative energy, right? It's vibrating because we chose not to process and let it go. We're holding on to it. So when you hold on to it, your physical body has to respond to it because you cannot separate mind, body, right? You know, it's a connection. Right. So now here's a great example. Where do you hold your stress?
I actually, to be honest with you, I hold my stress in my back and my neck.
There you go. Okay. Some people hold it on their forehead. Some people hold it in their stomach. Some people in their backache, neck ache, whatever. And the reason is that's happening is your body is not letting you know, look, this negative energy that you bottled up is not being localized. It's becoming a dis-ease. Your body's becoming dis-eased. So now, not only you're emotionally dis-eased, you're also physically dis-eased. That's why you're feeling the tension. So if you let this stay there and you keep having this stress over and over, pretty soon it becomes a chronic illness. So it's not a coincidence. But where did that come from? It came from holding on to those negative energy, and it's being localized. And you know, the negative energy, it has an impact on the cellular level. It changes the cell tissue. And then we end up having all kinds of diseases. And you know, stress is, I really believe, the number one causing problem, an issue for all the diseases, because it totally changes the body chemistry. And the longer you're stressed, the worse you're going to be. And the faster you're going to melt or decay. So when you talk about vibrational energy, yes, because you're constantly vibrating with all kinds of energy, but so are the feelings. If those feelings are trapped, you're going to be vibrating at a different level. You know, people say, oh, he's a low energy, or he's so hyper. These are all reactions to energy. And they're reactions to the feelings, nothing else. So it's not the words you're reacting, it's what's attached to those words. What do they mean to us?
Yeah. You know, this is so interesting and fascinating because obviously I mentioned to you that I have had 2 heart attacks, and I had a heart attack a week after delivering twins. And I was always trying to fix people. I was always trying to do all the work for people, and I would get super duper stressed. And then even more so recently, my daughter was diagnosed with leukemia, and I went kind of more on a spiritual search to identify, you know, what kind of emotions she might be attached to in relationship to, you know, her blood disease, her leukemia. And do you know that I discovered that on an energetic level, it says that the attachment is to anger. It's the seed of anger, repressed anger. What are your thoughts on that?
You know, Sherry, when your child is sick, it's never easy. It's never, ever fun. And, you know, it feels like somebody rips your heart, rips your gut, and you don't know where to go. You don't know what to do. Initially, what you experience is a shock. And then comes the anger. Why is this happening to my daughter? That's a natural process you're going through. After anger comes the hurt. And the sadness. This all come up, and you kind of take a look at, all right, I have this hurt because I'm dealing with my daughter who's fighting for her life, and I don't know what's going to happen, but it's normal process that you go through. The last thing you want to do is to deny yourself from those emotions. You need to allow yourself to feel the way you feel. You don't question them, because God obviously gave you feelings. Otherwise, we would have been robots. We didn't need them. So we have them. God gave you tears. Oh, by the way, did you know that they did a study on human tears to find out what it has?
Really?
And they found negative ions. I'm going, unbelievable how the money is spent. I would have told them that. When we cry, we discharge negative emotions. Of course we do, to heal ourselves, to grieve. That's a natural process, right? So, but when you feel those feelings, you flow with the emotion, you express those emotions outwardly so that you can not only heal, but able to deal with what's happening in front of you without denying, so that you can help the other person at the same time. There's nothing more freeing than to be able to say, I'm so sad that you're sick and you're going through this, and giving her the chance to say, Mom, I'm sad too. That's a freeing experience. rather than sitting there and saying, everything is good, everything is going to be okay. You know that's not at all true.
I love that you're saying this, because this is literally what has happened to Ashley and I in the last couple days. You know, she called me on the phone and just was letting it all out, letting her fear out, letting her tears out. And you know, she said, I'm scared. And I said, you know what, sweetie, I understand. I said, I'm scared too. You know, and I said, you know, I just want you to know how much I love you, how much, you know, I know that, you know, right now we're taking it one moment at a time, one day at a time.
You know, she is not feeling the fear, and it's so natural, right? All you do is you shoulder with her. You say, you should be scared. I'm so glad you're telling me. We're going to work through this, through those emotions. Don't hold them in. Let them out so your body will stay in balance, because you know what will happen to you if you hold it in. Your body's going to fight against you. You know what happens when people hold their emotions in? They become depressed. They become horrible. They suffer so many ways. So you go, you're doing the right thing. Talk to me. Cry it out. Let it out. You want to hit the pillows, scream angry? Let's do it together. Get this energy out so that you don't have to fight another demon.
Right.
And that's what this person needs.
I love that you're saying this. This is so huge, you know, because we're not taught to express our feelings. I mean, this is something that, you know, even as a child, you know, coming up through the 60s and the 70s, I was always told, do as you're told, you know, not to express what was going on, but to do as I was told. And, you know, it's always been like a roadblock for me.
Earlier, you made a statement. You said you always please people and caretake. And the reason that happens because from very early in life, when you become emotionally anemic, in other words, you learn that you don't have a right for your feelings, so you end up divorcing them, then that separation creates a huge confusion between caring versus caretaking. That's why for someone like you, caretaking feels like caring. When actually, it isn't. Caring is knowing how to take care of you. Caretaking is done out of obligation and guilt. It doesn't serve you.
Right.
But you cannot make the difference, because the only way you can learn to make the difference if you know your feelings. But when you don't know your feelings, it feels the same.
Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, and I can see too now, you know, based on all the things that you've been sharing, how so many of us can resort to alcohol or, you know, drugs or, you know, other substances to try to suppress, you know, all of those emotions that we've repressed.
All addiction is emotional numbness. That's really it. Why people are taking things? Because whatever you repress after so many years starts coming up, because there is no way out of this. That energy, that negative energy, like a giant beach ball, you try to push it into the pool and it just doesn't want to go down, wants to come back up, because you're going against your natural inherent self. So what happens, people just play that game by trying to bury things, by hiding things, by repressing things, hoping that it's not going to come to surface. And you get to a place where you kind of go, well, this is not working. Maybe I can take drugs. And of course, that works for a little while. Maybe then I can go gamble. That works for a little while. Maybe I can start binging and purging. That works for a little while. But the whole process is inevitable. You're going to end up in this dead-end road, and then you're going to crash and burn. Why? Because the whole thing will come up to surface. It just doesn't want to stay down. We are not built that way. That's why addiction, the most addicts get to a place where they are so desperate. In fact, they will tell you, I'm using drugs and alcohol. It's not even doing it anymore. I don't even get high anymore. Because you will get to a place where nothing works. But unfortunately, the early stages, when people experience 2-3 hours of escapism, they go, oh, this is great. And they think they're in control. When actually they're completely out of control.
So how can we help ourselves to overcome addiction? I mean, what can we do to help ourselves? I mean, so much of what I've heard you say is, you know, about awareness and self-care and expressing our emotions.
Well, they have done a study. ASAM and Kaiser Permanente did a 15-year-long study called ACE study, ACE. And the study was compiled around 15,000 patients. And they wanted to find out why some people became the way they are. What were the triggers? What were the indicators? And then they realized there was one common theme, and that was trauma. So what they found out that over 95% of the people they studied have experienced some form of trauma or multiple traumas, such as verbal abuse, sexual abuse, abandonment, domestic violence, and so on and so forth. They compiled this. So what they did, they cannot predict, Sherry, what kind of a life or future you're going to have based upon these traumas. Your likelihood of being an addict, your likelihood of having a mental health illness, or likelihood of being a homeless person. They cannot pretty much predict this. So when I read the study, and I was really relieved in so many ways, because what I've been teaching people is understanding that even though you've sustained trauma, what makes trauma overwhelming? Due to emotions. Otherwise, it will not be a trauma. Right?
Right.
So you look at it, if as a child, if you were physically abused, yes, that's a trauma. But how did you feel when your dad was beating you up with a belt? That's where the issue is. When the person does not know how to deal with those feelings, trauma is basically reenacted in the present. So you've got to know your feelings and understand. Understand how, what makes trauma is repeated in the present based upon how you came to terms with those feelings. There's a thing called brain dominance theory. And that's basically, to make it simple, when an individual sustains some kind of a trauma or traumatizing experience, it's oftentimes localized in your subconscious. And the degree in which that event was so traumatizing, so are the feelings that are attached to it will be that much more intense. So here's what happens. Let's use the same example. Let's say you were beaten up as a child. You felt so traumatized, and you have a lot of anger and fear from early childhood. So what happens is that in the present, if you experience fear or anger over something very silly and simple, and all of a sudden you're having a huge reaction to it, and people kind of go, what the hell is wrong with you? For something simple, you're not responding to that little event in the present. You're responding to what you weren't able to respond way back when. So you understand why we keep sliding back, going back to the point of reference. Well, that's what we call. And you respond the way you do. You either become shy, or you become cold, or you become paralyzed, depending on what you did. Or you just become violent. You're hitting, biting, punching. That becomes your point of reference. That's why people cannot seem to get over their past, because the way you come to terms with that event is the way you deal with it today, unless you learn differently.
Wow, that's huge. You know, because I myself had abuse as a child. I mean, I had a stepfather that was 6 years older than me, and you know, he wanted to, you know, have dominance and control over me, so he'd beat the crap out of me. And so for a lot
Yeah.
of years, I dealt with that through rage and anger. I dealt with it. And it was like you said, it was the simple little things, but everything would come out all at once.
Yes. Remember, all the negative emotions, especially those emotions, let's say pain, it's like a chain link. They're all attached together. So when you experience pain in the present, it fires up all the pain, so they come to surface roaring, and you feel overwhelmed. You feel acting out all over the place because you're no longer dealing with that single event or single pain anymore. You're dealing maybe 15 years of pain. And that's why a lot of people feel so overwhelmed. And that's why so many people get so scared of their own anger, because you're not dealing with one event anymore.
Well, and not only that, I mean, if I think about, you know, when my behavior would occur like that, and I let out all those emotions and all that stored energy, God, you know how much better I would feel?
Well, again, when you look at people such as you who have trauma, and I always ask them, how did you come to terms with it? There's never an answer. Well, they go, I just kind of try to forget it, or I put it behind me so that maybe it doesn't leave you. It follows you. And you see with people with a lot of anxiety disorders, for instance, and people, I had a patient one time that she was basically punished by being locked up in a closet as a child. And she remembers vividly. She said it felt like lifetime. And I will get hot. I was sweaty. I'm clawing myself out of it and yell and scream, nobody come and get me. Now you would think that was a childhood event and she's now adult, right? It's no big deal. Guess what happened to her? She is an vice president of a company, and she works with one of the high rises in LA, in downtown LA. And she's coming every day, takes the same roads, and takes the same elevator every day. And one day the elevator stopped. Guess what happened?
What?
The lights went out. She had a panic attack.
Oh, no.
She thought she was going to die. She said to me, I had all those feelings when I was in that closet came up. And everybody's looking at me, including some of my employees in the elevator, and I can't stop myself. I'm screaming, yelling, clawing my way out of there. And people are sitting calmly waiting and watching it, looking at me. She goes, I couldn't believe where all that came from. And that's usually the way it is. A single event can trigger those emotions from your past. When you just think it's gone, you find out that it hasn't gone anywhere but within.
This is so awesome. So how can, you know, our guests and listeners and viewers participate in your program? I mean, you know, it sounds like every single one of us would benefit, you know, from what you're teaching and sharing in your program, you know, with the 6 core feelings and, you know, eliminating these roadblocks. I mean, are you holding courses for this now, or is this an online program?
I used to do both of them. I used to do seminars and I used to do online. And because of my recent travel from Hawaii to Florida, I stopped the seminars, but I'll be starting that soon.
That's awesome, because
it's
I know.
Really,
go ahead.
It's really it's nice to be able to have, because I treat people from all over the world. It's really nice to see I have Canadian, English, from Australia, New Zealand. I mean, you got people from everywhere, and then it makes a very nice blend. And you realize people suffer the same way. People feel the same thing. It doesn't make a difference. And it's amazing what comes up. It really becomes very fascinating.
Yeah. Well, you know what's so cool is because now we have live streaming has become so popular, and people get to know who you are through these type of mediums worldwide. I mean, it's amazing how you can create, this online program where I can see you, you can see me, we can share with each other and benefit from your course in that way, because I know that a lot of our listeners and viewers probably want to know right now where they can go to obviously read your book, because I know you have a book, but really experience this. Because I mean, here's the thing that's so cool is you can really experience an experiential program here on the internet, like in this type of format as well.
Sherry, things have changed. And what we used to do, what we're doing nowadays, unbelievable. And like I said, my office could be in a Starbucks nowadays. You can just take your computer, set it there, and talk to anybody. It wasn't like that 10 years ago. And it really did change. World became much smaller place. And I love it. So I know what you're talking about. Like I said to you, I sometimes go to meeting and we have all these people coming from all walks of life and different backgrounds and religions. And you kind of go absolutely amazing what they share. Because we feel the same way, we go through the same things, we all want answers. And when you get it, application is the same, because after all, we're human beings. We are the same.
Yep, exactly. So why don't you tell our listeners and viewers where they can go to get your book, and how they can find out more about what you're doing right now.
They can actually go to my website if they choose to, www.DrSimonCasey.com. They can go there. They can also go to emotionalmastery.com.
Okay, so I put the first one, and the other one is emotionalmastery.com.
Yes.
All right, I got that one on there for everyone too. Now you have a test. I saw that you have a test they can do.
There's a test, yes. I do teach people some stuff right beforehand so they can understand where they are emotionally, which is, I do that and I send it back to them and they kind of go, oh my God, this is so true. How could that be so true? And it's so simple, and yet it tells so much about you. Because by simply answering 10 questions tells all about who you are and where you are today and what you really need to do to make the changes. It's not complicated. It is not convoluted. It's a very simple thing. And the answers are so to the point. And the person always writes me back and say, I couldn't believe how true that was and to the point that was. And it is, providing you're answering them as honestly as possible.
So where can they get this test? What's the URL for that?
They can go to my website. It's the easiest way. To click on the take a test, and they can take it right there and then.
And that's on the.
And then I will get it, and I will respond to them. What did you say?
I said that's on the DrSimonCasey.com. The test is.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Excellent. I just want to make sure everybody knows where to get that, because I had looked at that on there and I was like, I think I'm going to do this test.
Well, you should. Maybe that way you can go, wait a minute, I took that test. It was spot on. I'm telling you, it's all experiential. And you kind of go, okay, I get it. I understand it. So it makes a lot more sense to people.
Yeah. It's funny too, because when I was looking through all of your site, I was just like so amazed at when I started to read, just really understanding the different, feelings and talking about them and stuff like that. And I mean, now us talking about this today and everything you've shared, I really now understand the importance of being willing to share your feelings and not push them in, worrying about what other people are going to think.
Absolutely. Sherry, people don't care. Actually, they like to gossip about you. They smile at your face. They turn around, backstab you. Only people care maybe your very close friends or maybe your family. That's it. But we put people before us. We put them up on a pedestal, and then we end up feeling less than because we don't feel important. If you don't believe you're good enough, your life will not change. And you cannot get self-worth by other people, by pleasing other people, hoping that they're going to elevate you. No, the only person can elevate you to that level is going to be you. You have to believe you're a good person. You have to believe that you're worth more, and you're worth and you deserve the kind of life that you always wanted. And you have to seek it. Don't wait for others to give it to you. And it doesn't come.
So beautiful. So beautifully said. So thank you so much for joining us on the Whole Life Living show today. I mean, it's just been fun because you really bring forth that fun, playful energy. And I mean, that really, is resonating with me, and, because I love being fun and playful. Is there anything else you want to share with our viewers or listeners, as far as message you want to get across that we didn't share in the interview today?
Well, maybe I should finish by saying, the saying, therefore I am. That should be, I feel, therefore I am.
Very beautifully said. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Casey. We really enjoyed having you. For those of you who watch me weekly, I have an upcoming show next week. Actually, the following week, I will be in San Francisco all next week. So go ahead and look on the site, wholelifeliving.com, for the upcoming show guests. Once again, I'm Sherry Gideons, your host. I'm an international speaker, author, and life mastery coach, helping you clarify what you want in life so that you can win and succeed. This has been an amazing interview with Dr. Simon Casey today. And I want to thank you once again for being here. Bye-bye now.